Welcome to Lawyers Who Care, the video show podcast that highlights attorneys who go above and beyond for their clients. And on each episode, we will meet a new lawyer and they will share stories of when they went beyond legal counsel for the benefit of their client. My name is Andrew Samuel, and I'm the principal of Samuel & Wealth, a nationally recognized wealth management firm for lawyers, their firms, and their clients. And let's applaud Lawyers Who Care and learn from them. Today, my guest is Sandra Fava. She is the founder and managing attorney at Fava Law in New Jersey. Sandra practices exclusively in family law and represents clients in a wide range of matters, including divorce, child custody, and spousal support. Welcome, Sandra.
Hi, thanks, Andrew. I'm excited to be here.
So, Sandra, tell us about the firm.
Sure. So the firm is fairly new. In September of 2024, after nearly 20 years of a career in big law, I decided that I was going to pivot and open up my own firm. It was something I had thought of doing probably on and off for a couple of years, but it really felt like the time was right for several different reasons. And it's been a wonderful journey, to say the least. Of course, in the beginning, I was a little nervous. I had days where, I kind of was asking myself what I had done, but largely that passed quickly. And, here we are doing very well, growing recently, and will continue to evolve as our clients need us to.
So what's the primary difference, at least in your practice specialty, between big law and a more boutique firm?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've been asked that a lot in the last few months. So from my experience, the large firm that I was affiliated with, obviously continued to grow, was a national footprint, an AmLaw 100 firm. And it was run much more like a corporation than when I had first began there, 20 years prior or 18 years prior. And for personal services, like what family law is, when we are dealing with individuals and families and people who may be at their worst, given the circumstances of their personal life, it was really starting to have a really large divide that was becoming very difficult to bridge between hourly rates and just kind of the expectations from management about how things should be handled, and clients, how they should be treated. And I really it didn't align with my values, quite frankly. And I wanted to get back to where I had built my career, which was, helping people, helping families through difficult transitions, being able to kind of know my practice and have greater control over it, in the sense that, I could be flexible with certain things. I could take on cases that maybe otherwise I would not have been able to at the firm, because I knew, they came from a great referral source or things like that. It had become increasingly difficult to do that. And rates really were becoming, for the practice area, I thought something that was just not reasonable in our area. Firms do a lot of studies on those types of things, and I just didn't like in the way it was going, and I wanted just to have more control over it, frankly, so that I could continue to provide, the same level of service, but just kind of without all the other stuff that was taking up time that I didn't want to have to spend on, frankly.
Mm-hmm. And how did you come to the law generally, or your practice specialty, or more specifically?
Yeah. So I'm the youngest of three. My parents are immigrants here, so I'm a first generation lawyer for my family. I was a whoops baby, so the first to go to college and then on to law school. And while I was probably a young teen, preteen, we had a very close family member who went through a really difficult divorce. And so I had always been intrigued with the law from a young age. In fact, I tell the story, which is true, that as, like a child, 5, 6, 7 years old, my favorite television show was The People's Court with Judge Wapner. And if I was misbehaved, I would not be allowed to watch that. That would be part of my punishment, because it was something that I really every day had to see.
Hold on. That sounds punitive.
Yes, right? Very tough parents I had. And so after the family experience of divorce, I still wanted to become an attorney, but I did not want to practice family law. I really had a strong, but I thought, aversion to it. And as I got older, another television show influenced me. I don't know if you remember Ally McBeal, but she was a corporate lawyer. And I thought, oh, I could do that. I have I speak a few languages. I love to travel. I have some business acumen from, just family having its own business. So I thought, that's what I'll do. And as I got into law school, I just kept falling into several opportunities where I would have family law experience. And the people who I was either working with or who were supervising me continually would say to me, you really seem like you have a knack for this. You really seem like, you handled that really well. Or people really seem to, warm up to you very quickly. Do you want to take an interest in this? So it snowballed, to doing taking on a pro bono assignment for somebody at my first summer associate position that they didn't want to be involved in, to going back to school and taking a couple of classes, to then, being a part of the family law clinic at my law school alma mater. And then, I just eventually said, let me see where this goes. After law school graduation, ended up clerking for a family court judge. And then I decided that this was really where I wanted to be.
And you said you had a great client story that you wanted to share with us.
Well, so, over the years, I've represented lots of different people in family law matters, right? I've represented, obviously, the men and the women, the husband, the wife, the mother, the father. I've represented grandparents who are seeking visitation, same-sex couples in the dissolution of their relationship, whether it's a civil union or a marriage. And so one of the things that always rings true to me time and again is that generally people who I represent and people who go through this process are scared. I mean, terrified. I don't believe that I've experienced anybody who's come to me who has felt, oh, when I got married, I was really hoping for the day that I'd be sitting in your office and talking to you. This was all part of my master plan. People are usually, in a bad emotional place, if not mental or physical. This is a big deal. Studies have shown that the divorce process can be similar to the grief process. The loss of a loved one. The stages of grief are ever present in that. And so for me, when I work with a client who comes in that sort of situation and they're fitting the quo of where they are in the process, and I watch them transition, it is really, really rewarding. And oftentimes those people have come back to me and been very gracious in thanking me to helping them. And my approach is that, I'm here for the law, of course. I'm also a human. So the story matters to me because I feel like I have to know my client and understand kind of the way that they're approaching the situation, not just the legal insight that I'm going to be giving. It also helps me to develop kind of the team of professionals that may need to be involved in this case, whether it's just making sure that there's a therapist in place for the client, that there's some sort of family resources if there are children involved, making sure that, we're looking at things from an objective lens and getting people in that can help us to do that. Otherwise, things don't move forward. People end up being stuck in transition because they can't make decisions because they're scared of the future. And in particular, I had represented a client and it was the woman, the wife in the marriage, and it was a very long-term marriage, nearly 50 years. They had met as teenagers, grew up in the same neighborhood, families knew each other. And the husband, they had adult children, but somewhat still financially reliant on them, finishing up grad schools and things like that. And they were very successful financially. Her husband had a very successful business, and she really didn't have any idea, and this is not that long ago, about what the business did, where the money came from, how the bills were paid, who the bills were even attached to. None of that. And she initially would not be able to get through a telephone conversation or a meeting without shedding tears and tears and going through a box of tissues because of her fear and her just, feeling like she was so uninformed, and that she had, made poor choices, and she should have been more proactive in the relationship and learning things. And, ultimately, not only did we get her a very fair but favorable settlement that, she had security for the future, but she really transitioned, in that process and started to understand and learn things about what she could and couldn't do, where she needed help, understanding the financial issues, the bigger picture, and then, obviously the day-to-day matters. And she is thriving right now. She moved out of state, and she occasionally will reach out, send me photos in an email. And it's so wonderful to see how she's just been able to really step into that new life of hers. And I have a lot of stories like that, frankly, so men and women, not only women, who've really been in a very difficult position, didn't think that they could really find their way out and have, come out on the better end of where they were.
Mm-hmm. By the way, thanks to my guest, Sandra Fava of Fava Law in New Jersey. Sandra, can you provide our audience with your contact information?
Sure. Our website is favalawllc.com. You can also find us on social media, LinkedIn, Sandra Fava or Fava Law. On Instagram, we have @favalawllc, and we also have a Facebook page.
Wonderful. This has been the Lawyers Who Care video show podcast that highlights attorneys who go above and beyond for their clients. And if you're an attorney or knows one who does go above and beyond, and I think Sandra's story captures that perfectly, for a long-term relationship, and was able to restructure both the family unit and, provide a platform for her client going forward. Feel free to reach out to us, 914-666-6600, 914-666-6600. Sandra, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.